Right, good morning everybody and welcome to British APCO 2014 event, the first session of the day. For those that don't know me, I'm Sue Lampard. I'm currently the President for my sins and retired thankfully from Surrey Police after 31 years last July, so it means that I can spend all of my time doing BAPCO stuff. It feels like it at the moment anyway. This session, as you will see from the programme, is about our multi-agency information transfer programme. We've got a number of team members that are here today. Some will be doing just a short presentation about where we are, and some we'll invite to answer questions later on and join the panel. Dave Barnes will introduce himself, but he's going to give us a bit of an update in terms of where the government wants to go with the open standards side. Then I'm going to give a little bit about the user perspective, because obviously that's very critical in terms of the information that's being transferred between agencies. And then John Hunter from Vector Command is going to talk more of the technical side, although, John, you're not a techie really, are you, I think?
I was once.
He was once. Oh, well, he classes a techie in my book then, because Vector are going to use some European project funding to actually build and develop the MAIT hub for us. So on that note, I think we'll leave questions until the end, if that's all right. We'll just do the presentations and then we've got plenty of time for questions and answers with the panel. So at that point, I'll hand over to Dave.
Great, thanks very much, Sue. Welcome, everybody. Delighted to be here yet again at British APCO to be able to present to yourselves around the work we've been doing around the multi-agency instant transfer. So delighted to be here. Travelled up yesterday. Delighted to see it's raining outside. It's good, typical northwest weather, so I love that. Did try to think of a joke this morning, April Fool's Day. I was going to try and hobble in just to really scare Sue, but unfortunately I could see the stress level was pretty high already, so decided against that. So I'm just going to talk through this morning the first of the three speakers. Sue's following me, and then she suggested, and then John after that, to talk through the work we've been doing around the multi-agency instant transfer work, where it's going, and some of the background and some of our past experiences around that. So I'm just going to quickly talk about the role of open standards, how we see that evolving in government. You'll probably be aware of the real push and drive towards this, so I'll just do a couple of moments on that. Just quickly reference the work we did in Wales, for those of you who aren't aware of that, a couple of years ago, to really get this ball rolling, get some momentum behind this initiative, and see how that goes, and then just finish with some of the next steps that we're taking around the open standard work, but I'll leave others just to talk as much about that as me. So just a very quick first slide. For those of you who aren't aware, I'm from the Civil Contingency Secretariat within the Cabinet Office. We coordinate emergency planning across government departments. We're also responsible for the Civil Contingencies Act legislation, which governs all of that process at the local level, and we try to support that. The boxes on the right-hand side there are what we define as our principles for emergency response. Whole host of those there. I'm sure, hopefully, many of those aren't a surprise to you. We've got preparedness, continuity, that she's thinking about standard process or just scaled up. We've got something about direction, clear strategic objectives and clear gold, silver, bronze structures. And then clearly, also crucially, of interest for us in this space is obviously around communication, making sure that people know what is going on and that's going multi-way where possible. So we've been looking at this for some time, hopefully as you'll be aware. We've been looking really quite heavily around multi-agency interoperability, and there's just a quote there I've lifted from the Government Strategic Defence and Security Review, where the government committed to looking at that and working on that. And you're obviously all in here, so you can't see it, but next door is the JESIC presentation. I know there's a couple over the next few days as well, and that's another example of where the government is investing time and effort into working to improve interoperability between the emergency services. So why open standards? As you're fully aware, lots of organisations comprise the public sector, even more comprise the emergency response setup. Lots of both private and public bodies in that, and actually the need to collaborate to achieve in that is crucial. However, some of these relationships are changing. Clearly, we're fully aware of how technology is changing. I'm probably the one on the left in that seat. I didn't use, I very rarely use Google Documents or anything like that, but nevertheless, the way in which people are able to work together, particularly using the internet and other bits and pieces, is quite vast and quite incredible. And also this the drive on efficiency, reducing costs wherever possible, trying to preserve operating budgets has led, in our view, to greater use of shared services, not just in back office roles, but ever increasing in the front office sections as well. And I think, again, this is where, for us, where MAIT starts to, multi-agency instant transfer starts to progress. In terms of an open standard, what is it? What is an open standard? I've lifted this from the government's definition or the principles of an open standard. So we've got something about collaboration. That is, it has been constructed or created in a collaborative way. It's transparent, so people can see it, people can comment on it, people can critique it. We've got something about following a due process, so that there is a set way of that being discussed and approved and followed. And again, that's something which I hope you'll hear from the presentations this morning. That is something that we are doing. Something about fair access. Clearly, we need to make sure that whatever standards are created are available to people. Otherwise, there's not much point in creating them. And again, we'll talk about how that's being taken into account by this work. Market support is really crucial. And again, I think that's why we're working so closely with BAPTO and the commercial organisations to support this. More again, you'll hear in a second. And crucially, royalty-free, i.e. nobody needs to pay to use or access that standard. Again, that's crucial, we think, in being adopted. So in terms of the work we've done in Wales, just going back a couple of years, as I say, the idea of this really was to try and put in a centralised hub to enable organisations to share incident records between one another. I'd like to be joined by Tim up on the panel with me, who I'm sure will comment later. But he's from South Wales Fire and Rescue Service and really important role and partner in that work, in implementing it and seeing and evaluating that and getting that to the position that we're at today. What we wanted to do was test if the instant transfer was technically possible, what benefits that might produce if we do go through that, learn lessons, and again we'll come on to that shortly, and also looking at some of the enabling technology and the process work as well. One of the other aspects that Tony, sitting also in the front, will crucify me if I didn't mention was some of the work we've also been trying to look at around the National Property Gazetteer and the unique property reference number, in order to make sure that we all know what address it is that we're going to when we exchange these incidents between organisations. It's crucial for us, crucial for you to make sure that we're all going to the right place, and that was another key aspect that we wanted to test as part of this trial. So in terms of what we actually found, we were able to transfer over 1,000 incidents over kind of a 6-week period between the organisations that were involved, which was South Wales Fire and Rescue Service, Gwent Police and Newport City Council. Produced a whole raft of recommendations to assist the future work, and I think that's given us a real good steer for what it is that we need to do now, where that needs to develop, and so on. I guess crucially in terms of the operational benefits, a significant reduction really in process times. So where we've managed to eliminate the need in the vast majority of cases for control rooms to call one another over the telephone, clearly being able to send that electronically without having to enter into that process is cut, we reckon, about just a shade under 4 minutes off of that process. Also, some other, I guess, less tangible benefits. Certainly, suggestions that there's been improvement in the situational awareness of the personnel attending incidents, where they perhaps receive bits of intelligence or information from other parties that were already at the scene, helps them get them in a better position to then go and deal with whatever it is that's coming. They've got that little bit extra information, and linked to that some of the improved health and safety aspects as well. So again, if there's a particularly hazardous environment, be that through people or other items on the floor or whatever it might be, then again, people are aware of that before they enter that situation. And again, that was recognised as being a benefit of the work. And also some of the some of the greater use and sharing of language between organisations has also helped understand how people work, how that goes ahead, and trying to standardise that as well has also been a significant benefit in finding from the work as well. So just quick canter through as to what it is we've done, why we've set down on this path, and now just in terms of maintaining the momentum from some of that work. So as I mentioned, the project in Wales concluded way back in 2012. We haven't been sitting still since then. We've really been cracking on. and in particular, we're looking to, within Wales, really extend this concept out across all emergency services within Wales itself. So there's 8 emergency service organisations in Wales. That's the scope of this project. I'm looking to be able to exchange incidents between all 8 of those. Developed a whole series of information sharing protocols to enable that. So not only is there the process and the technology to support that, but also the procedures, which is also crucial when you're dealing with personal data, incident details, and other perhaps sensitive information. Trying to look at a procurement strategy around how that could be delivered as well. Tony's been focused on that. Looking at common incident lists, so how do we all define a fire or not, and to what extent does that need to be standardised across organisations to be able to work that through. Some work around specifying a hub in the middle to enable that, talking about some information transfer protocols linked to the sharing procedures, and then also looking at wider data standards within Wales as well to try to drive that up. In terms of the next steps that are going on there, there's a real suggestion that this is going to save a significant amount of time across control rooms in Wales. I've just lifted that from Tony's project documentation. The programme's well underway, and it's hoped that we'll have the first few organisations live onto this hub, be able to share incidents between across these organisations by June of this year, with the remaining organisations transitioning one at a time after that. Also a whole set of training procedures that need to be developed and gone through, as you will understand, changes the way that people work, another crucial aspect for us. And again, looking at how we work with control room personnel to enable that change is also crucial as well. So in terms of the government, what are we doing? We're trying to actively support, well, we are actively supporting, I hope, the development of the open standard on this. Hopefully other people agree with me on that, but so this is what we're doing from the Cabinet Office perspective. Working alongside the Open Standards Principles, which is being managed by the Government Digital Service, GDS. This is one of the things that we're trying to promote and encourage. We've just got the principles there, and they're the ones I touched on at the start, and we've been trying to coordinate that as best as we can. In terms of agreeing it, a whole series of steps to go through. I'm not going to dwell on this too much because I want to steal Sue's thunder in a sec. But we've got a working group, we've got a strategy board, and then also there's a wider corporate governance framework around that as well across the whole of government, with the aim being that once this is agreed, once this has been reviewed and considered, then it will be accepted as a standard that all central government departments and their agencies will have to incorporate into any work that they may wish to do. So that will, whilst it doesn't necessarily include local organisations, clearly if that's defined and standardised at that central government level, then we would see that would also translate into local level agencies as well. So in terms of developing the standard, a whole series of user groups that we've had set up, led by members from BAPCO. Again, I'm not going to dwell on this too much because I know Sue is going to cover this as well. But also we've tried to incorporate recognised information requirements of those different organisations, make sure that's included into the standard, into the data standard, to make sure that organisations are getting the right information that they need. We've also looked at some of the learning that we identified from the trial back in Wales, so we've included additional elements such as rendezvous points, and then also tried to build in this location element as well to make sure that we can, when we're exchanging location details, that again we're clear on what basis that was derived from and how that then could be interpreted by other people. We've had some few challenges along the way, as you might expect. A simple thing, trying to agree organisational identification codes. Lots of different systems set up across the different emergency services, and trying to agree a common set of those has been difficult, although I think we're almost there now. Also agreeing what the core mandatory fields are. So we've got quite a lot of data, quite a lot of fields in the standard, but also trying to work out which ones are crucial, which ones we must include, rather than those which would like to have. Common incident definitions across agencies. We've kind of fudged this one for the time being, I think. But nevertheless, that's something that we need to come back and have a look at, we think, to see how we can better do that. And then also securing the time to develop and progress this issue. This is an add-on to lots of people's busy day jobs. So trying to perhaps move it at the pace that we would have liked has perhaps been a bit more difficult than we would have hoped. But I think we're in a good place, and hopefully you'll hear more about that later. But just to finish my section, I just want to make you aware that actually we do have a draft standard published now, live as of today. Thanks to Batco and Sasha in particular for publishing that and getting that up on the website. The website is there. We're really delighted to hear any of your comments that you might wish to take on there. We've tried to build it for both technical people and non-technical people, so we hope that's kind of worked. So we've got some kind of scenarios, how it might work in practice, as well as all the detailed information about the schema as well. So please do go on there. We really want to hear your comments. This is us putting it out there for views and comments and contributions so that we can improve this, make it as standard as possible. Standard as possible. Poor turn of phrase in this, isn't it? But as far as possible at this initial stage. We recognise, I think, that this needs to go on and develop, and this is about putting a line in the sand now to get something released, but nevertheless, that's where we see it. So please do have a look. Please do go on and add some comments if you have any, or even if that's endorsements. I'm sure there will be plenty of endorsements, but please do go online and have a look and pass us your views. Thank you. Hand over to Sue. Some of the working sessions that we've gone through.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting that the Cabinet Office are actually leading this one. And the good thing about the Cabinet Office, and I do say good things about the Cabinet Office occasionally, is that they cross all of the other government departments and agencies. And I think I always describe it as the light coming on, light bulb above the head a couple of years ago when they got involved with the Welsh pilot, and that really stemmed from those of us who chair telecommunications subgroup, and I can see Aaron sitting out there may be one or two other TSG chairs, but we work very closely with the Cabinet Office, with the local resilience forum side of the business, planning resilient telecoms. And for years we've been banging on to the Cabinet Office about you've got to normalise civil contingencies, and this is a really good example of normalising civil contingencies, because the National Resilience Extranet Hub was used to do the technical stuff in Wales. So it's really good to see it coming together. I think the other conclusion I've come to in the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks in terms of what we're calling MAIT, because you'll see Dave calls it multi-agency incident transfer, and I call it multi-agency information transfer. I think the conclusion we're coming to is we've got MAIT the schema and MAIT the vision, and at the moment the schema is being developed from the old DIT schema, the XML schema, but the long-term vision of MAIT, I think, is that there will be complete interoperability in a seamless way between all of the public safety agencies, public service agencies. So that's where we're trying to get to. Now, what do I do here? Do I push a button? No? Have I gone the wrong way? Yes. Right. So, I'm just checking that I can see what you're saying. So, one of the first things we did when Dave approached us to say would we work with him to develop this open standards, we looked at what else was going on around the UK. CIFOA, the Fire Officers Association, are doing a whole piece of work on the back of the fire control project, because there's lots of activity with collaboration and rebuilding control rooms and command and control systems, etc., etc. And they've got a national programme where they are looking at buddying up brigades in terms of resilience with command and control so they can pass information. Now, they're currently doing that on the old DIT schema, and there's a whole national plan in place around that. So we linked in with them at a very early age. And I don't know whether early stage. Is Jamie here? No, Jamie All from CIFOA National Resilience Team. We linked in with them and said, look, we don't want to stop anybody's work, but what we all need to do is have an eye on where we're continuing to go in the future so that we're on the same path to get there. So we're linked in very closely with Jamie and the team in terms of what they're doing. The police already can talk to the highways electronically. That was the original schema that any command and control supplier in the room here will know has been put in place for a long time. So we don't want to lose sight of the fact that that's already existing. There are quite a number of ad hoc point-to-point connections, for example, London Ambulance Service and the Met Police and plenty of others across the country. And we're really not trying to, stop that happening, but we're trying to say there is a way forward here. So please link into us when you're considering what you're doing. Wales, Dave has already mentioned, and I'm sure Tim and Tony will tell you more about later where there's questions. And then going back to the policing world, the National Police Air Support Service insisted on having technical links, the DIT links, as it were, from each police force up to West Yorkshire. In order to request a helicopter or air support services. So there is quite a lot of activity, and what we're trying to do is to bring all of that into one, so we've got the roadmap to go forward. So I think we talk about MAIT as being something that's going to be absolutely wonderful, and I think one day it will be. I think I should be well retired from British APCO, and I think a number of other people in the room probably will be by the time we get there. It's not going to be the panacea for quite a long time. We're going to very much in the early stages do what the Welsh have already done and had very good experience and very positive experience on, and that's about just replicating what we pass over the phone between emergency services. And we will be including the Coast Guard because they're very keen, they're a national agency and they're very keen to be involved. So it'll be police, fire, ambulance and Coast Guard. So in replicating the phone calls, we don't have to worry too much about the information sharing, the data sharing, what questions we ask, because that process is already happening. And in the early days, it will be instant transfer, so it will just be command and control data. At some point in the future, I'm hoping that we can migrate it across to records management. So in principle, you could go from police records and, you know, ambulance could pull police records and police could pull patient records. That isn't going to happen in practice because there's lots of protocols around it, but you see the principles in terms of how you could access that information. But we are keeping it very simple, so the early days will be quite limited. The benefits, I think, are fairly explanatory. As Dave has already said, the experience in Wales has been quite significant in terms of, A, you can push a button and the information goes to the other agency, so you don't have to wait for somebody in the other control room to pick up the phone, which can be challenging at times and very frustrating for control room operators. So, you know, it arrives in a timely way and it actually gives the information that's been taken on one command and control system straight into another. So you don't have this Chinese whisper effect of people interpreting what the customer has said and then putting it on their own system and then telling somebody else. Actually, I think the public would expect there to be a seamless service. I think if you said to members of the public, actually police, fire and ambulance can't transfer information between the agencies, they wouldn't quite believe it. I think the expectation would be that we could do that in the here and now. And actually, when you look at the savings, and the Welsh have made significant savings, and that's just with respect to Wales, you know, a fairly small project so far, that replicating it across the rest of Wales is going to magnify those savings even more. You start looking at the whole of the UK, and we're probably talking millions. When we first started looking at it in my old role in Surrey Police, and we did some work with the old point-to-point connections, trying to get the 7 police services in the southeast connected together, point to point, and doing the business case for my own force, and bearing in mind this wasn't talking to ambulance and fire, this was just to the surrounding police forces, that would have saved me 4 operators worth of time, which in those days was about 120k. That's one police force, which is a fairly small police force in the great scale of things. So significant savings to be made. So next steps. As David's mentioned, we do have what I describe as the wider MAIT team. We've opened that up to anybody who wants to be involved in it. We try to meet every couple of months. What we're doing now, and if you come to the session at 2 o'clock this afternoon where Gavin Stevens is talking and we've got another different panel of people, we're linking it in with a programme of work called ONAT, which is Overt National Asset Tracking. That's a programme that's being run by the Home Office. And surprise, surprise, they're looking at developing open standards for tracking assets, police, fire, ambulance, vehicles and people on a map so that you can see each other's resources. Strangely, we felt that was quite linked, and it was actually our commercial colleagues that pointed out that they were sitting on the commercial user group, as it were, for ONAT, as well as sitting on the MAIT user group, and wouldn't it make sense to join these two things up? So we have got, now we're going to have meetings of the wider MAIT group on the same day at the same venue as the meetings of the ONAT group, so there can be that networking. But to drive the business through, we've developed a core MAIT team, most of which are sitting in the room today. You've got Tony Bracey, who's in the front row, Tim, who Dave has introduced, and Henry from Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue, who's just joined us as well. Simon is back from Hampshire Police. Is there anybody else from the team? And we now have a weekly conference call where we just are really trying to drive through the actions every week about the hub, but we are looking for another site to test the hub that Vector are going to build for us. We're hoping that it's going to be Hampshire. Simon from Hampshire Police is really keen, and his guys that work with him are really keen, so we're just waiting really from the green light from the bosses in Hampshire Police. But as far as we're aware, South Central Ambulance, certainly the local fire and rescue services, and there are 4 of them that are in a collaborative arrangement down there, and the Coast Guard. So what we're hoping is we've actually got a site that's got all 4 partners of the blue light services that actually want to work with us to do this. So if we can get that off the ground, then the hub can be built and we can really start testing this thing in earnest. In the longer term, what we will probably look to do is to develop the standard now. Quite how that's done, we're not sure, but we think in principle we should have some sort of user group activity that meets twice a year, where we can feed in extra questions, extra data that's going to be shared, so the schema can be upgraded gradually, and we can take the command and control suppliers with us in that sense. And for me, Dave's talked about, you know, the government, and what I see actually is not very joined up government. That's probably being a bit cynical. There are lots of programmes going on. You've got the UK alerting that's being run in the Cabinet Office. You've got ONAT that's being run in the Home Office. You've got Next Gen 999, and all of that links into this as well in terms of the kind of technical flow and the technical standards. So we actually think that although there is some strategic leadership going on, it's not wonderfully evident and it's not wonderfully driving things. What we think will really work effectively is what's worked in Wales, is you give it to the operational staff and then you turn it off, which is what they did at the end of the Welsh pilot, and they said, please don't turn this off because we love it. And I think if you can start to develop that across the UK in that very operational sense, you start to change the culture. Because so many times over the last 20 years we've seen interoperability, let's build a joint control room, and then there's a wall between the fire and the police. You know, and you have to change the culture. You have to get people engaged in sharing and being happy to ask questions for each other and put them on command and control log. And then there's all sorts of issues around where do we get the funding from. I'm linking in with the Home Office at the moment, the policy unit in there that's looking at the innovation funding, which is the government funding for interoperability that's coming out this year. Next year there's some more funding going through DCLG. Our view is that anybody who is looking to put in a bid for some funding needs to consider MAIT as part of that bid, so that they're actually building MAIT into what they're thinking is as far as their interoperable processes. So I think that's probably all I was going to cover, and we'll do questions later. So John, I'll hand over to you, if that's okay.
Good morning. I'm John Hunter. I'm the MD of Vector Command. Vector Command develops command training and operational command support software for the blue lights, and in fact for anybody that has an emergency or an incident to manage, all of which requires good comms, because we require good information, and good information requires good comms. So what have we been up to? Well, we're a software company, so we've been having fun. But in actual fact, we've been involved in this standard that was talked about earlier. We've been involved in helping to get that to the stage that it's currently at, officially called MAIT 1D, but it is the first standard that is being published. It's not the final job, but it's a good stepping stone to the final end. There are some things in there that we think are important. So there are the absolutely essential items, and then there are the things that might be included, and then the things that we're not quite sure are going to be included. And they have a sort of generic form that allows us to adapt them at a later stage to the information that we now know, or at that point will know, we're going to want to transfer. A key requirement for this is the inclusion of strong validation. We don't want anybody to be able to come along and start publishing information onto this network that is going to be used to communicate between primarily the emergency services. So we need strong security protocols, some form of authentication, but also some form of ensuring that the data is genuine. So there will be format checking and all sorts of clever security protocols behind the data. So continuously checking that the data that is going through this network actually conforms and is the right kind of data. Sue also mentioned ONAT, so the Overt National Asset Tracking. And this allows agencies to, it can look like the same data at the end of the day, but it's not the same data. This is actually talking about what your assets are and where they are at this particular point in time, rather than what you're doing with your assets or how you're going to manage your assets, which is more about the command support or the command of the incident itself. It's not quite as well developed at the moment as MAIT, but we have made quite a lot of progress. So lots of requirements have been discussed. We've talked about an initial schema. We've talked about whether it should be a hub or point-to-point, stateless or stateful. In other words, is it just a pipe, or does it actually hold the data and pass it on? But the big issue is we've got opposing forces, and we need to resolve that duplication or non-duplication. So you've got MAIT, which it is looking at information about how you command and manage an incident, and you've got ONAT, which looks at where your resources are and how you might want to, and how you can then tell them to go from A to B, but not how you're actually managing them. And in the first instance, they do look like they're the same data, but they're not. However, Vector does plan on building a hub that will manage both kinds of data, so that whatever data you need or whatever data you wish to provide, we will be able to handle that data through one single hub. And so you can, so MAIT is point-to-point and hub, so you can work point-to-point or you can work as a network, a web, a mesh. It is stateless, i.e. it's a pipe. It passes the data. It doesn't actually hold the data. It is transactional, and it's using XML as its underlying data format. ONAT, not yet decided whether it's going to be a hub or point-to-point. It's probably stateless, but we're not convinced on that one. It will work on TCP/IP, but later it will probably move to UDP. It'll be streamed data, so it's not data you request, it's data that is pushed out there, and then you can read if you choose to read it. It will start out as XML, but it's likely to move to JSON. But some of these things, as you can see, ONAT is not quite as clearly defined as MAIT is at the moment. And that's where we are at the moment. So I work for Vector Command. I'm going to take 2 seconds. So we have a stand in the showground of B21, and we're doing demonstrations of what we currently have. Rod at the back or I have these little cards, and if you come and get one, you can enter a draw for some champagne.
Right, Tony, I don't know whether you want to come and take my seat and I'll stand here. Do we have any questions? Now's your chance.